Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Thursday everybody. We have some big economic and financial developments to move through, and first up, outgoing Vice Premier Liu He gave a widely covered speech at Davos this week on the Chinese economy. Many of the points covered in the speech reiterated the key themes of the 20th Party Congress and the December Central Economic Work Conference, which we remember was heavily in favor of policies to support economic growth. Quote, Liu He, on behalf of Xi, wants to clarify the policy confusion and misunderstanding and to reassure the world China will continue the market-oriented reform and opening. It seems the new leaders are reversing leftward policy changes and re-embarking on Deng Xiaoping's line of reform and opening. End quote. And, quote, a strong message from Mr. Liu's speech is that China will stick to what has worked well for China in the past few decades and take a pro-growth, pro-business and pro-partnership approach in a fragmented world. End quote. In a research note after the speech, Goldman Sachs Group Inc. told clients, quote, in general, these comments are market-friendly and should help restore investors' confidence in the economy. End quote. And then today, Standard Chartered's chairman Jose Vinales went so far as to express, quote, in the second half of the year, I think the Chinese economy is going to be on fire, and that is going to be very, very important for the rest of the world, end quote. However, our often quoted commentator, Bill Bishop, warns against renewed, overly optimistic echo chambers within financial institutions that believe that it will be smooth sailing on the policy front from now on. Quote, we may not be far from false claims that the leftward lurch of Xi's first 10 years was just a power consolidation tactic, and now that he ran the table at the 20th Party Congress, his true reformer self can come out. End quote. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen and Vice Premier Liu He, as expected, met on the sidelines of Davos yesterday. Nothing new or particularly salient was announced, except that Yellen may visit the PRC in the near future. UK-based Reuters cites a senior Treasury official as informing them that during the 3-hour meeting, the two sides agreed that both countries could take steps to avert recessions in their own respective economies, and, quote, the two delegations had a productive discussion about sovereign debt issues, food security and energy, end quote. Adding, quote, Chinese officials were aware of financial risks posed by the property sector, but were optimistic about resuming closer to normal growth, end quote. Next up for the economy, yesterday the Commerce Ministry announced that growth in foreign direct investment, FDI, into the Chinese mainland slid to 8% in 2022 to $189.1 billion from 20.2% in 2021. In RMB terms, growth slid from 14.9% in 2021 to 6.3% in 2022. The ministry said that the 2022 growth in foreign direct investment was mainly driven by higher manufacturing investment, which jumped 46% and accounted for 26.3% of total FDI. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin has put together these charts that we're looking at here, writing that a breakdown of monthly FDI data in dollar terms shows that year-on-year growth in investment inflows has gradually slowed over the year, dropping from a peak of 45.2% in the January through February period to 12.2% in the first 11 months, before ending at 8% for the whole year. Investment from some regions has plunged, with others seeing decent jumps. For example, investment from the European Union almost doubled. Investment from South Korea grew 64%. US FDI into the PRC is a different story, however, and it may get worse. US media reports that Congress is getting ready to propose its own plans to restrict US firms from investing in sensitive Chinese technology companies. House lawmakers, including the chair of a newly established Select Committee on China, have expressed such intentions. One bipartisan bill to be introduced by the Senate would require government approval for certain American investments in foreign countries, which would certainly include China. Next up, COVID deaths and more on the economy. Hey guys, as always, if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit that like button, and for anyone who is willing and able to go that extra mile and help me keep this channel sustainable and primarily subscriber supported, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. Next up, we have some developments on China's first wave COVID front, as well as opening up. The London-based research firm Airfinity, AIRFINITY Limited, has made headlines again with its new report this week, estimating that since December, cumulative COVID deaths in China already stand at 608,000, and that peak daily deaths will reach 36,000 per day in China over the Lunar New Year holiday, a truly incredible rate, if accurate. Of course, the official death rate remains very, very low, and the consensus is that it greatly undercounts the number of deaths caused by COVID in the country. An increasing number of anecdotal reports give us an idea of how this undercounting is occurring at a systemic level. For example, the UK-based Financial Times recently interviewed workers at a Chinese hospital who revealed to the outlet that if doctors believe that the death was caused solely by COVID-19, they must report to their supervisors, who will arrange for 2 levels of so-called expert consultations before a COVID death is even confirmed. The also UK-based Reuters made a similar claim in an article this week after speaking with, quote, 6 doctors at public hospitals across the country, end quote, writing, quote, some relatives of people who have died with COVID say the disease did not appear on their death certificates, and some patients have reported not being tested for coronavirus despite arriving with respiratory symptoms, end quote. State media has been busy responding to international criticism of China's official death rate. Quote, some Western media and observers have been slandering China for not revealing accurate COVID-related data, claiming that it undercounted the overall deaths and infections. Rather than focusing on the death toll in China caused by COVID-19, the priority for the world is to get through the impact of the pandemic. Calculating the specific number of deaths caused by COVID-19 is not feasible for most countries and regions. End quote. Now, finally for the economy, let's talk household credit. Recently, Rhodium Group published an excellent report titled The End of China's Magical Credit Machine, which argued that China's economic growth will slow significantly over the next decade, and that one of the most important drivers of this slowdown is the unwinding of an unprecedented credit bubble. Quote, China's financial system simply won't be able to generate the same levels of credit growth that it has in previous years. This means that Beijing will have far less control over the direction of its economy than it has in the past. Growth in total societal financing, TSF, a measure of funds provided by the financial system to the real economy, is at all-time lows, and other credit metrics are decelerating. Over the next decade, we expect rates of credit growth in China to fall below 10%, with knock-on effects for investment growth and the broader economy. End quote. Wright, the main author on this particular report, gives 3 main reasons for why he believes credit growth is under pressure. The first, credit demand is slowing sharply, quote, because households and corporations have reined in their expectations for economic growth, end quote. Second, lenders are becoming more cautious in response to rising credit risks in several asset classes. Quote, as implicit government guarantees for borrowers lose credibility, this is particularly apparent in lending to the property sector. End quote. Of course, we saw the large plunge in investment into the property sector with yesterday's video. And third, credit supply is constrained by the massive size of China's financial system and the difficulties of maintaining high rates of credit growth while complying with regulations related to capital requirements and loan loss provisions. The report, which I would recommend to anyone who is interested in this specific area, identifies several implications for China's economy due to this projected slowdown in overall credit growth. First, Beijing is losing control over a critical policy tool which gave it outsized influence over the financial system. If Beijing can no longer provide the guarantees that ensured lending was safe, then financial institutions must protect themselves and reduce their exposure. Quote, lending will become increasingly concentrated in a group of state-protected borrowers and quasi-fiscal institutions at the local government level. End quote. Second, the slowdown in credit growth reduces surplus liquidity in the financial system, thus reducing the funding of speculative investments. And third, the slowdown in credit, quote, accelerates the reckoning China faces with its existing growth model. End quote. Weaker credit growth means less credit available for refinancing old debts and keeping quasi-fiscal local government infrastructure lending alive, according to the report. Quote, whether by active policy change or the gradual pressure of rising debt, investment-led growth is finished in China. Whatever the future brings for China's economy, it will not look anything like the past. End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow.